King of Kings. Every 4 years in this country, we vote for the leader of the free world. Each candidate positions themselves over and against the others for the right to be called the President of the United States. At the end of this political race, Americans are divided over the results, some rejoicing in victory, while others are bewildered in the wake of the outcome. This constant tension arises from one fatal flaw that has been repeated throughout history. We have placed our hope in man and man's kingdom. Rather than looking to the heavens for the answer, humanity has turned towards themselves and repeated the error of Israel, 1 Samuel 12, verse 12, when they demanded a king to be over them. In that moment, they rejected God and his kingdom and replaced the eternal wisdom of God for the temporal wisdom of man in order that they would be like the other nations. 1 Samuel 8, verses 19 through 20. God's intent had always been that they would live under his reign. Yet Israel had desired to govern themselves with one of their own ruling over them. They had hoped that things would be better that way, but their first king was a disappointment. As good as Saul started out, he lost his way, 1 Samuel 15, verses 22 to 23. And God promised that he would replace him with a man after his own heart, 1 Samuel 13, verse 14. This man was David, and under his rule, Israel prospered. While David was certainly imperfect, he became the gold standard to which all other kings would be compared. 1 Kings 15, verses 3 through 5. David had faithfully served the Lord, returned the Ark of the Covenant to Israel, and built a tent for the Lord to dwell. As he pondered building a house for God, the Lord told David that his son would build his house, and God would build David's house. God would establish David's reign through his descendants forever, saying, I will raise up your descendant after you, who come forth from you, and I will establish his kingdom. I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me. 2 Samuel 7, verses 12 and 14. This prophetic promise became embedded in the hope of Israel, especially the hope that another David would arise from their midst. With the rising and falling of each king, the hopes of Israel ebbed and flowed, like waves crashing against the shore. This promise became important as Israel went off to exile to be ruled by foreign nations. One nation after the other oppressed Israel through the centuries, kindling the hope for God to fulfill this promise and vanquish their enemies. It was at the fullness of time that God sent his Son in the line of David to fulfill these promises made to Israel. A righteous king would come forth and bring the rule and reign of God into full realization. In Jesus, Israel did not just have a man after God's heart. Instead, they had a king with God's very heart. Jesus is the king above all other kings who came to rule in their midst. This week's readings are concerned with the fulfilled promise that God has sent forth a king that would be over all kings.